second largest natural gas reserves, trailing just behind Russia. Combined, in a different world, Iran would be a natural energy corridor, piping gas into China, shipping oil to India, and turning its mineral wealth into diplomatic leverage and hard currency. Don't even have to look far to see what that version of Iran could look like. Just across the water, countries like the United Arab Emirates and Qatar have taken similar fossil fuel endowments and turned them into modern economies, complete with infrastructure, sovereign wealth funds, and global business. For Iran. Another round of sanctions now. Most economists agree that no country should lean too heavily on maintained, and acquiring modern equipment is almost impossible under the weight of sanctions. The irony is painful. A nation overflowing with fuel, unable to keep the lights on. This imbalance is reflected in the data. Iran uses more energy per person than countries like Denmark, but produces far less economic output in return. It's one of the Iran might have oil to sell, but it can't move it through normal channels. It can't ensure the shipments. It can't domestically. It's since scrambled to build up that capacity. But the refineries are often subpar, producing fuel that damages engines and worsens air pollution. It's not an upgrade, it's a workaround. This international isolation doesn't just make Iran poorer, it makes reform harder. It limits what's possible, even if the political will to change existed. And perhaps most dangerously, it has created a kind of economic bunker mentality, one where survival has taken precedence over strategy, and where making the system work just well enough to avoid collapse has become the new definition of success. it just goes toward preserving a fragile status quo. That's not to say there haven't been attempts at reform. Iranian technocrats and economists have repeatedly called for diversification, for creating a more open and productive economy. But their efforts are often stymied by a combination of sanctions, internal resistance, and political paranoia. Any move that might reduce the state's control over the economy is viewed with deep suspicion by a leadership more concerned with stability than prosperity. In such an environment, meaningful reform is almost impossible to sustain. What makes this even more tragic is the human cost. Iran has a young, educated population, or at least it did. For decades, the country has been experiencing a steady brain drain as talented professionals leave in search of better opportunities abroad. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and entrepreneurs, the very people who could help build a post-oiled economy, are leaving, or simply never given the tools to contribute meaningfully at home. And now, even the demographic advantage is slipping away. Iran's birth rate has plummeted, one of the lowest among low-income nations, meaning its population is aging quickly, with fewer young workers to support future growth. There's also a glaring absence of a sovereign wealth fund, or at least one with transparency or scale comparable to those in the Gulf. Instead of turning oil profits into long-term assets, Iran has used them to paper over short-term deficits, react to crises, or extend subsidies that can't be sustained. The result is an economy that doesn't grow. It just treads water, constantly reacting, rarely progressing. It didn't have to be this way. With the right investment, governance, and international access, Iran could have been a powerful economic force in the region, not just as a supplier of crude oil, but as a hub of trade, innovation, and human capital. The resources were there. The opportunity was there. What's missing is the system and the willingness to seize it. Iran's oil dependency is more than just an economic imbalance. It's a national identity crisis. The country has been blessed with extraordinary natural wealth, enough to build a prosperous, resilient, and globally connected economy. But instead of leveraging that resource base to transform the nation, Iran has become trapped by it, politically, economically, and strategically. Oil has become both the engine of survival and the anchor of stagnation. The problem isn't just that. Iran relies too much on oil. The problem is that everything else has been allowed to atrophy in the shadow of that reliance: industry, infrastructure, human capital, and perhaps most critically, institutional trust. Sanctions, of course, have played a massive role in creating and reinforcing this dependency, but sanctions alone don't explain why internal reform has been so difficult. At its core, the oil dilemma is a reflection of Iran's broader systemic inertia, the inability or unwillingness of those empowered to adapt to a changing world even when that world is closing in around them. The tragedy is that none of this is inevitable. Iran has the raw ingredients of success: a young and educated population, geographic and geopolitical advantages, and vast reserves of the world's most in-demand resources. What's missing is a system capable of turning that potential into something sustainable. And until that changes, oil will remain both a crutch and a curse, a source of temporary relief that delays the urgent need for structural change. So, what is Iran's oil dependency dilemma? It's not just that the country relies too heavily on a single resource. It's that the entire economic and political framework has been built around maintaining that dependence with no clear path to escape. The world may change, demand may fall, politics may shift, but without bold reform, Iran's future risks looking very much like its past, rich in resources and poor in everything else.